Well, what I think you realize after a while, or at least I did, was that some of the things that I'd taken on, they weren't actually mine. They were they were like the, what do you call it, the stabilizers that you have on the bike as a kid. They helped me to get going. But they weren't really, it wasn't really my own authentic way of working. I had to find that for myself. And in order to do that, you kind of have to be willing to let go of some of the things that you've taken on board. So that was one thing that I learned, was that you can't just mimic someone else's approach and expect that to continue to work for you forever. I think there's a point where you're going to outgrow that. And if you're aware of that, it's not a problem, because you can recognize when you're ready to outgrow it. In my case, I was starting to get burnt out because Ken Metzen, the guy who I did clinical training with, he worked like a GP. He was like a homeopathic general practitioner, and he would see like 35 patients a day. So 15, 20-minute appointments, high turnover practice, very much clinically oriented prescribing. It's a great way to get a practice going. It's also a good way to burn yourself out. And also there was a point where I realized, actually, I want to spend more time with people. I got more interested in what happens in the consultation space. I started to discover there's a lot of healing potential in the consultation space, even before you get around to thinking about remedies. So I wanted to give myself the time to explore that. So again, I had to change my approach. I had to drop the idea of seeing 30. I mean, I never got up to 35, but I was seeing about 25 patients a day. And so I just had to cut that back a lot, give myself more time, and take all the pressure off myself to try to find remedies,
Hmm.
and focus more on the actual space itself, the listening, and and me being a kind of reflecting mirror so that the person could have their own realizations. And what I discovered was that a lot of healing happens spontaneously in that space. And the more that you the more you're aware of that, the more you can leverage it to your advantage and also for the patients. Initially it was just a happy accident when it happened. And then I started to say, oh, there's something here. There's something that it's like an underused faculty, which I could probably make more use of. So I'd say that's one of the key things, is that willingness to keep letting things go and outgrowing the old form so that you continue to evolve as a practitioner. That's really what kept me going. And well, what that eventually did for me was that the interest that pulled me into homeopathy eventually pulled me out of it. I suddenly realized, oh, I don't seem to be using remedies anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a conscious decision on my part. It was just a natural evolution. I just kept following my interest.
Right, right. And so in that, it was it that you became the remedy by becoming such a perfect mirror for that person so that they could have those insights, which you refer to in that quintessence forum talk as the
Yeah,
insight.
I wouldn't call myself a perfect mirror. I think that's stretching it a bit. But I realized that was what I was more interested in exploring and getting good at. So I just gave myself permission to go down that path and kind of let the other stuff fall away. I remember one day I was sat with a patient and the window cleaner came. He was cleaning the windows, this guy, and he's got a big smile on his face and hi, giving me a wave. And I suddenly realized I wasn't listening to the patient, I was watching the guy. And the thought occurred to me, I want his job. I hadn't realized I was burnt out, I was just exhausted. And then I quickly realized, no, I don't want his job. What I want is how it looks like he feels, which was like carefree. It looked like he was just carefree and he's doing his work and he'd go home and he wouldn't think about it anymore. Whereas I was going home with a pile of cases. I was working on cases till 11 o'clock at night. And I was overwhelmed and exhausted from working in that way. So I just sat down one day and I just made a list of all the things that I didn't really want to do anymore as a homeopath. And it was quite a long list. It included repertorizing and all the things that I thought I had to be doing.
Oh my goodness, you're coming at such a good time for me because I'm supposed to be teaching repertorizing right now.
I
And
just
um and it comes from that, I think, that echo chamber of homeopaths saying in order to be a homeopath you have to have this, which as a beginner homeopath, I understand people want to have those pieces that everybody else seemed to have, but it's really so amazing to speak with you where you've reduced it to the bare essential.
Yeah, I mean, I learned it first, to be fair. I went through the process of,
Right.
to some extent mastering the repertory, and I was confident enough that I could use that tool. But I did again, I just there's something in me rebelled against being dependent on any of the tools.
Uh-huh.
So I just wanted to see if I could get away with it, with if I could get away with working without them, and just to see
Right.
what would happen. I thought, well, if what's the worst that can happen? I'll go back to it.
Could you just work with like the Tao? And when I say that, what I've noticed is when you're really present with the energy around you and everything's connected, the remedy comes in every kind of moment, like the moment that before you
Yeah,
step into the appointment, something
that's it.
comes up.
Well, that's what I
Um,
discovered. Yeah, I
right,
discovered the same thing. And
right.
and also the less that I had on my mind, in other words, the more I was just in that kind of open, relaxed space, the more likely it was that something would come in and I would recognize it.
Mm-hmm,
Whereas if my mind was really busy and really cluttered, I was missing those intuitive nudges because
right.
I had my own ideas basically of what I needed to be looking for, what questions I needed to be asking, what rubric I was converting it into rubrics in my mind.
Mm-hmm,
And I hadn't really learned this at that point. I've learned it subsequently that we have these two different modes, and then to some extent they're kind of mutually exclusive. We're either using one or t'other at any given moment.
mm-hmm,
So if we are busy-minded and we're in the intellectual mode, there's not so much room for intuition to come in clean.
mm-hmm,
It kind of gets lost in the noise. So for me, it was a necessity to kind of put all that down, not just physically, but also mentally, so that I could really, as you say, just be present.
mm-hmm.
And then what I noticed was my listening improved a lot. I started to hear things that I couldn't hear before. And I was picking up things that I would have missed before. Um, and also, I was noticing what was happening for the client. My observation improved as well, so I could respond to that. I would catch things that they would miss. I
Mm-hmm.
would see something that they'd realize something, but they kind of skip over it and they're on to the next thing. And I was like, no, wait a minute, come back here. What was that? Because I learned to spot it. You can see when someone has a shift, when someone has a realization, but they don't always recognize it themselves. So I think it's for me, it's like a fine tuning process. I was fine tuning my own listening, my own observation, and also my own felt sense. I was just learning to trust more and more. If I was feeling something's a bit off, I would include that. I wouldn't dismiss it. Or if something came into me that seemed a bit random, I would trust it, even though it seemed a bit random. I was like, okay, there's something here, and maybe I would bring it into the conversation. I say, I don't know why I'm asking you this, but I'm going to ask you anyway because it's what's coming. And you know what? It would always turn out to be the right thing.
Right. So it's like you clear yourself to be kind of more of like an empty vessel,
Yeah.
but you also allow your own perceptions
Yes.
to feed into the case. And this was a discussion we had just this last week where I had people practice case taking. And the question was how do I know when my perceptions are the perceptions of the case and not my personal filtering, my own stuff?
Mm.
And I said, well, sometimes you can't tell the difference because there's shared resonance too.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, the kind of general answer I would give is it's in the feeling.
Hmm.
So I think there is that to me there is there's a different feeling for me that comes if it's coming fresh, as it were, and it has that form of intuitive guidance. It has a certain feeling quality for me. Whereas
Oh,
if it's recycled, it doesn't have the same feeling to it.
so you've attuned yourself to recognize where these impressions within you are bubbling up from.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Or at least to know that much difference. If it's coming from my own memory bank, I can generally tell.
Hmm.
Whereas if it comes fresh, it has a quality of freshness to it. And it might take me by surprise. It's like, oh,
Uh-huh. It's like,
right?
oh,
Exactly.
interesting. Yeah, there's like an oh. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And
Cool.
it doesn't sound like much, does it, when we describe it like this? But to me, that's enough to go on.
Right, right. Yeah. So I'm assuming, but I may be wrong, that you probably have a meditation practice.
No,
No.
I don't.
Okay. So I guess I'm wrong.
I don't. I mean, I've tried all kinds
Michelle,
of stuff.
Zoe, Jen, did you kind of start to assume this yourselves?
I,
Jen thought yes, okay. Zoe thought so too. So amazing.
I've experimented with all kinds of different practices and processes and what have you. But when I came to the work of Sydney Banks, which I discovered in 2011, I heard him speak about meditation, and he just validated my own experience so clearly, because what he said people confuse the state of meditation with the practice of meditation. He said the only reason you would need a practice, or you'd want to practice, is because you want to spend more time in the state of meditation. And he said, if you're already in the state of meditation, why would you need the practice?
Oh, wow.
And I thought, that's true. If you actually spend most of your time in a place where your mind is relatively open and relatively quiet, why do you think you need to meditate? It kind of becomes an extraneous add-on, which, unless you really enjoy it, then in which case, then of course, go for it. So there are times when I just enjoy sitting with a quiet mind, but I don't consider it a practice. It's not something I feel the need to do on a regular basis or for a certain amount of time or anything like that.
Okay, so here's a question. As a homeopath, you're like, okay, the ideal inner environment for me is to be a quiet mind, kind of have a place of inner listening. But life happens, things speed up. You get that song stuck in your head, looping around.
Yeah.
Um, then do you find a remedy for yourself? Are you constantly actually clearing your own states to maintain this place of inner peace?
No,
No?
no, because what I've learned about that is um, the idea that I would need to clear it or do something to make that noise, go away or go down. It's actually a misunderstanding for me now. It looks like a misunderstanding about how the mind works. I would say that it's designed to be self-clearing and self-regulating
Mm-hmm.
in the same way that the body is designed to come back to what we call a healthy norm, like a homeostasis. Well, the mind too.